All getchkes that you find a getchkela, you have to assume it's also bano, because the goyim, even though they don't worship it every day, they worship it at least once a year. The only getchke that we consider that the goyim did worship it is if it's holding one of three items that indicate that it's a getchke, either a stick, a bird, or a ball, a sphere, and we will see the significance of these three items in the Gemara. They called over. If it's holding anything, if there's something in its hand, like the axe that Avram put into the Getchke's hands of Terech that you pointed out yesterday, anything that shows it's important will be enough to indicate that this was served. If in fact it's an accepted fact that every getchke you find, we can assume, was served once a year. So my time of the Rabbanan, how could the Rabbanan deny that should be asabana, and the Rabbanan should require some other indication? Punkt where Reb Meir lived, that's how it was. And there were individual places here and there, but a myriad of places where every getchke is serviced at least once a year. But Reb Meir holds in every city, even in a city where you don't assume that they were oived this Zara once a year. This is one of those cities that they do it. Gazar Shar Mekami Mois Auto Oisimot. So a getchke found anywhere where geyser, because there are places where they're served every year, once a year. The Rabbanan, they're not chayish l'miyuta. So this goes back to the famous machloikis between Reb Meir and the Chacham. Amar Yidam Shmuel, Bandarti shel malachim shanin. Reb Shmuel said, which is this is how Rashi learns, not Tosfos. Now we're not talking about mamash getchke. We're talking about like a bust of the king that was made. Rashi says it's usually a king that was dead, and it's made for his honor. That's where the Rabbanan say a regular getchke that you find. Avoda the Rabbanan hold. It's also bano. You have to assume it was served. Here you found a little getchke, a bust of the last king, where usually it's just made as to honor the king, but not necessarily as an avodah zara. If speaking of, we found this in a very chashuv place. So there, the Rabbanan hold that it would be considered a getchke because it's an andarti. Tosfos learns exactly the opposite. The Rabbanan really agree that everywhere getchke is osir. It's only by the andarti that they're makel, and they're only machmer if the andarti has in its hand one of these three items. So really, Rashi and Tosfos in this case are polar opposites. Zokta Gemara Vayter, now we're on that mem aleph amud aleph. Omer Rabba machloikis b'shel kfarim. The whole machloikis is in a village where they normally don't have statues for beauty. So by default, we're going to assume that it's an avodah zara. Aval b'shel krachim, if it's a larger city, divrei hakol mutarin. Everybody holds that these are not getchkes; they're statues for beauty. My time l'noy abdelu. Freit the Gemara u'de kfarim mi kalamandamer l'noy ka abdelu. In kfarim, are you telling me that someone holds it could be done l'noy? Because we know it's a machloikis, right? Machloikis b'shel kfarim. The machloikis between Reb Meir and the chachamim, if by default you say it's in the avodah zara, is in kfarim, meaning that the Rabbanan would hold by kfarim as well. It's l'noy. So Gemara, Mikla Madam l'noy kavdilu. So Gemara, you're right. The kfarim vadai lemiflechinu avdilu. Any getchkele that's found in a derfala, for sure, is going to be for avodah zara. They're not making anything decorative in a small little village. The machloikis is even b'shal krochim, where even though you might want to say that this is just a statue for beauty, it's an ornament. It's not a getchke. Reb Meir holds it's still a getchke. Any statue found in a village, we have to assume is an Avoda Zara, and it'll be Asur. Ain Asurin Ella if it's holding something. Why is a makal? One of the three items a makal. Why is a makal an indication that this getchke is a god? Sheroide is atzmoi tachas kolodim kulim makal. Because it's controlled under the world. This is lashon sakinor. When we speak about Avodah Zarah, we don't want to say that the stick is a symbol of power, that the getchke is controlling everybody. That's not how we express Avodah Zarah. Rather, we express it like he's holding the stick to show that he is under the rule, under the thumb of the whole world. So that's just how the Gemara expresses it, because we're speaking about it in Avodah Zarah. Tzipor, what chashivas does holding a bird show? Normally would show that he's soaring over the world like a bird, but again the Gemara describes it the opposite, that he just gets splashed on because he's standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Kadur, what's the significance of a getchke holding a sphere? So literally it means he has the world in his hands. But we're saying for carrot, he's underneath. Tana, we learned Taisifu Alein. The Chum said there's some other items that indicate Sarora, Saif, if he's holding a knife or a sword, Atara, if he's wearing like an ornament around his head.
They thought the world was flat in those days, didn't they?
It's funny that you bring that up because the Rishonim speak out that I think it's Tosfos who says. Tosfos says, look at this, Kader, She'olam Ogl, because the world is round. He went up high. I don't know how he got up in some type of rocket ship. He saw that the whole world is like a sphere. And the yam is like a bowl or a pot or a pan. It wraps around the world. So it's interesting. As early as the Gemara's time, Tosfos is saying they knew that the world was round.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting you brought that up because that was a discussion. Zok to Gemara, there's also Saif, Atara, Tabas. Saif, how come they added it later? It means that there was a point that holding a sword didn't mean anything, because Meikara Sover listed him Ba'alma, he's Tamaganev. He has the power to kill anybody. A Torah, when I think of a Torah, I think of it in the Torah Talos. So some type of thing around the guy's head. Meikar Sover Gedil, Kalili Ba'alma, it's just a decoration. Sover Katara Lamelach, like something that a melech would wear. Tabas, what about a ring? Meikar Sover Ishtaima Ba'alma, he's just carrying the signet ring of the king, but he's just a schlepper, a servant. Under his chasima is the entire world. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, he said, what did he say? I just looked at Mishnah a minute ago. Shimon ben Gamliel says, Zok Mishnah, Av kol sheish called over anything is a symbol of a getchke. Tana afilu tzrar, even a rock, afilu kisam, even a splinter. Boy Ravashi. So Ravashi says, if everything, holding anything in his hand is a symbol of godless, what about tafas biyodoi tsoya mahu? What if the getchke is holding a pile of dung? Mi amrina, do we say kula alma zila ba'pei kitsoya? Forget, by putting dung in the getchke's hand, it's a declaration that it's not a getchke, because he has dung in his hand. Oy dilma hu miu the zil ba'pei kula alma kitsoya. It's forget. It means he says the whole world is to him like Tzoy because he's a god. Have the Gemara take it.
Maybe he was a Baal Pa'or. Getchke.
Yeah, that's exactly what David just said. Yeah.
Dr.
Gemara weiter. What if you find broken pieces of a getchke? So how do you perceive that? Is that a getchke? Is that a getchke that was discharged? What is that? It will be mutter. We can assume it's mutter. Let's see if Rashi says why. Even if they are complete getchkes, we have a machlokes if they were served, right? Rameir held they would be served once a year. Chum say no. So even if they're shleimim b'safek lo of them, maybe they were never served. Him shleimer of them, and even if you're going to say that they were served, emer botlim l'kach shivro. Say that they were mevatel avodah zara, because why else do they break them? Have a sveka ulukul. So the halacha is, if a yid makes an avodah zara, there is nothing that will ever remove the status of avodah zara. It remains osher b'noah forever. But a goy, even if he has a getchke, he could undo it. He could renounce it. He could change his mind, and it will be Torah. So if you ever want to buy a getchke from a goy, make sure to be sure that the goy renounced it first, because otherwise, once it's in your hands, it can never be reversed. Amar Shmuel, afilu shivrei avodah kacham. In fact, Gemara, the Adnan, we learned shivrei tzlamim, meaning shivrei tzlamim. Tzlamim are something that we don't even know if it was made into an avodah zarah. It's just a statue. That's mutter. But shivrei avodah kachavim, is Shmuel going to add to our Mishnah, even if you know for sure it was an avodah zarah, if it's broken pieces, it's mutter? Zakt Gemara, yes. Hu adin dafilu shivrei avodah kachavim. Really, even shivrei avodah kachavim are going to be mutter. So why did our Mishnah chap on dafke shivrei tzlamim? Why did katani shivrei tzlamim mishum the kaboy lemishnah seifa? Because of the seifa that we're going to learn. Oh, I didn't even finish the Mishnah. Motza tavnis yad or tavnis regel. You saw either a broken hand or a broken foot. My taich is not right. The maskana means it's a foot on a pedestal or a hand on a pedestal. But now we're saying just a broken piece of getchke. Harei elu asurim, they will be also mepnei shechayoytze behneva, because sometimes people serve just a foot, just an arm. So what does it say in the Sefer? Mota tavnis yad tavnis regel harei asurim. Why? Mepnei shechayoytze behneva. So since it's going to say that, which is davka if it was nevad, therefore. So will be usher. Even broken pieces of it is usher. Why the shiver islamim mishum the kaboy lemisn seifa mata tavnis yad tavnis regel arela surin mipnei shekayoyt ben nevad, because they could be nevad. But a complete tzelem, even a complete tzelem, if it's a broken tzelem, it's going to be mutter. Dafka a foot. Tanan mata tavnis yad tavnis regel hare elu asurin. So we're analyzing these words. Am I fracting? Why is it that way? Well, how we learned? They're broken, and if they're broken, they're no longer in avodah zarah. Zok to Gemara, Tirgam Shmuel will explain. The Mishnah that says that the broken pieces of leg are also is Rashi, it's al basison, it's al mokoim, al kanon, it's like on a base, mokoim hamasukana. Zot Rashi, even though svinu also, if they're placed on a pedestal, they're not like a broken piece like in the Reisha, where it loses its status as of a god. Rather, even the Sfina also it's put on a pedestal, it's put on a mount, Vandai Palchalu, they're still surfacing. So really any broken piece of an avodah zarah will be mutter. But if it's something that it's clear that it's mounted in a place where it's showing chashivas, there it's going to be. So Rashi, what does Rashi learn? Pirish al bibul shalohin, they have some type of base. Veloshin motza kasha. The mashma is shukah besada. Torah says a lashon mission doesn't seem to indicate it's on a base, because what means you found it was happenstance on the street. You didn't see it in the museum. Lakach near the Tam lefarish sheyesh lehem beis moshev rachav sheyesh v'nalav levada. It's speaking where it has some type of base that it was sitting on. Veinim nirim kishvarim. It's not broken. A broken piece, like a broken shlamim, Shmuel said, would be mutter. This was never broken. It was a foot that was originally sculpted to be a foot. That's when there might be us. What if a getch kastamazai breaks? It wasn't broken You don't have an indication that it was actually broken by somebody. So you don't see that the goy was mavatlet. It happened to have broken. Rabbi Yochanan or Asura, it could still be Asur. But Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Oiber Muteris, it will be mutter. Rabbi Yochanan or Asura, the goy was never mavatlet. It broke by itself. But Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Oiber Muteris, because the goy will say Mistama Betuli mavatale. For sure, if it broke, the goy is mavatlet from its status of an avodah zara. Meimer Amar, even the goyish couple will figure this out. If this geshke couldn't even save itself from falling and breaking, if Humpty Dumpty couldn't help himself from falling off the wall, lahu gavra matzlech, he's going to protect me. He can't protect himself. How is he going to protect me? So by definition, a broken avodah zara is no longer a getchke by a goy. I'm going to prove to you that a broken avodah zara that broke by itself is also, because when they stole the Aron, wherever the Aron was, which is when the Plishtim stole the Aron back in the times of Eli HaKohen, the wherever it went, it caused a problem. Now there was a getchke called a dagon. It was like a big getchke in the shape of like a standing fish, it had arms and legs. So what happened was the getchke fish, when they came in the next day, they found that the head of the fish and its two hands were cut off and were sitting on the door threshold. It says V'roish dagon u'shtei kapos yodav, crusoes were cut off and they were sitting on the doorpost, not the doorpost, on the door threshold where you walk in. Uchsiv, and it says that because of that, the goyim al kain lo yidichu kehane dagon. Ever since then, the kohanim of this avodah zara never stepped on the threshold, because now in their minds the threshold became kadosh. So you see that the fact that the getchke broke doesn't take away kedusha for keret. The place where it landed now became by them a makom kadosh. Amar loy, Reish Lakish said, Misham raya, you're bringing me a raya from there. There it's a raya to me. Hasam shemanichin is hadagun, v'avdin is hamiftam. For keret, there the fact that the dagun broke up, they're not serving the fish anymore. The fish is always getchke. Now you know what the getchke is? The getchke is the threshold. Because if the threshold subdued the getchke, so now the threshold is the God. The getchke now is the actual threshold. Unbelievable how people abuse it. It's hard for us to even know what the type of avodah zara is, but it's almost comical that now they're served the threshold. Esvei, hamoicher shivrei tzlamim, harei elu mutarim. Hamoitze, this is our mission. If you find broken tzlamim, harei elu mutarim. So we can make a deal. Ha, shivrei avodas kacham. If you found stam broken pieces of an actual getchka, asurin. So that's a right to Rabbi Yochanan that it's asur and a kasha Reish Lakish. So if we're loitema shivrei avodas kachavim asurim, don't say shivrei avodas kacham asurim. Ela ema. So when the Mishnah says if you find broken pieces of slum, they're mutter, the dik isn't to make broken pieces of an avodah zara mamish is mutter, is usher. The dik that you're supposed to make is complete slumim are usher, even though you don't know if they actually served this tzelem. Meir, and we pass like a mayor that that any tzelem, any getchke, whether or not you know it was actually served, we assume it was served. That's a dik to make from the Mishnah, but not that the shivrei oived kechavim are usher, because Rabbi Reish Lakish shows that they're mutter. Rabbi Yochanan says it doesn't help if you're going to quote Rabbi Meir, because midir Rabbi Meir nishma lehu l'rabbanan. The only difference between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan is whether or not you assume a statue is an avodah zara. But other than that, whatever is classified as an avodah zara, they would agree about its status. So lav omer meir tzlamim asurin, but shivrei tzlamim are mutarin. That would be a contra of meir. So the Rabbanan avodas kechavim nami. If you know for sure it was served as a getchke, it had a kader in its head, he asura, it will be asur ushvara mutarin. And its broken pieces will be mutter. So you have a raya now to Reish Lakish. This turns around and now it's a raya to Reish Lakish. It's like Mahachiyashta. Hasam Eimar Avodam Eimar Leavdom. If it's a question of a tzelem, now don't compare a tzelem of a mayor to a real avodah zara of the Chachamim. because Bishlam Atzelem, Lechatchila to Suffolk if it was served or not. Vim Tim Salemer of them, and even if it was served, aim a bottle. Now that it's a broken piece, maybe the guy was mavatlet, so it's a sveka. But avoid is gechavim. But if you know for sure it was a getchke, vaday avdua. They for sure at one point served this getchke. It was once also al getchke. Miyemer the butler. It's only a suffix if after it broke, where's the guy mavatlet? Have a suffix vaday, have a suffix vaday. There's a suffix whether or not the guy is mavatlet. But vaday was also at one time. In suffix moitemi the vaday. The suffix that the guy might have been mavatlet won't take away the isser of vaday isser that it was once an avodah zarah. Frank Gemara, is that so true? The ain't suffix moitemi the vaday. I'll illustrate to you that suffix would be moitemi the vaday. But Tanya we learned chaver shemes. A chaver died. V'hiniach megura melea pears. He left a warehouse full of pears. Fafiluhin b'nei yoyman. Even if he just brought them into the warehouse today, he just completed working on today, so he barely had a chance to be misakin them, to be mafresh trumas and nevertheless, harein becheskes musukan. We assume he was misakin them. Now this is definitely in tzavak moitzi devadai. V'yahacha devadai tvili. We for sure know these payers are teva. Sovik asrinu, sovik lo yasrinu. It's only a sovik if the Talmud Chacham had enough time to be mafresh trumas and before he died. And what is halacha? The Brisa says, harein becheskes musukanim. So you see clearly, because it's sofek l'moitim midevadai. So you have a raya sofek is moitim midevadai. So shouldn't we say the same thing by the avodah zarah? Or no. Hasam vadai uvadaihu. By a Talmud Chacham, it's not a sofek if he was ma'asher them. He was vadai ma'asher them. The vadai asrinu could Rab Chanina huzno. Huzah, like Rab Chanina huzah said. Damar Rab Chanina huzah, chazaka al chaver she'enoi moitzi davar. We have a chazaka that it will never happen that the produce of a chaver would be left and it wouldn't be mesukin. It's just never ever going to happen. So it's vaday uvadai. The boy say maybe it's not a vaday uvadai, but it's a suffix usufik. So it's not in suffix moitim midevadai, it's suffix moitim midesufik because maybe in fact these payers were never mechuyev in trumas ha'maisros. Maybe this chaver, to be safe, to make sure that no one would be nishal in eating his pears, be iser, he made sure that they never became teva. Like Rabbi Oishia told us, a person could make a loophole with his tvua to avoid the chiyuv trumas ha'maisros from being triggered midaraisa. When he enters it into the house, it's before it's threshed. It still has its soilus in it. There's no miruach done. There's no gemar malacha done. Then once it comes into his house, even if he does the gemar malacha in his house, it doesn't matter anymore. Kedei shedehei behemto echelas. Now midirabanan, midaraisa, this is not tevel, but midirabanan they were geyser that a person shouldn't eat from these pears derech kva. You can nash from it, but you can't use these pears derech kva without being mashed them. But your behema you could feed with derech kva. So maybe he did that kedei shedei behemto yechelas u'petur min ha'maiser. So therefore, this either is a vaday uvadai because vaday the Talmud Chacham was maser, or it's a suffix to suffix because maybe it never became mechuyev in trumas and maisers. Okay, gewaltig. So now, now we're taking a little bit of a break from the sugya of avodah zarah. We have this machlokes between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, and the shaila was, is there a raya from our Mishnah that you assume that the shvarim are usher? Could you make a diak dafka shivrei tlamim are usher, but not shivrei dafka shivrei tlamim are mutter, but not shivrei avodah zarah? And that is the machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, whether or not you could make that diak, whether or not shivrei avodah zarah usher. Do you say that they're broken so they're not avodah zarah anymore? Or do you say that the guy, or do you say that the guy for sure would be mevatlet if he knew that it was broken, because his attitude is, if the getch couldn't save itself, how's he going to save me? So I think the Mesivta brings down from the Ramban a nice shot in what it is. If the guy saw the getch break, then yes, we can assume he said this is not worth anything. But what happens if we know if the guy saw it break, the guy would be mevatler, but the guy didn't know that it broke. This broken, tell him you don't know if the guy saw that it was broken. So is it like it's like a shot of yish shaloi midas? If the guy would have known that it broke, he for sure would have been mevatler. But Heinz, he wasn't mevatler yet because he doesn't know that it's broken. That's the machlok to Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish as to whether or not that's considered an adequate bittul. Now let's go to the original shayla bein tzavik moitzim midevada. Is it true that there is such a rule that ain't tzavik moitzim midevadai? For Tanya we learned Amar Rabbi Yehuda. My son, there was a story b'shivcha soy shel meitzik echad berimoin. Meitzik Rashi says that Gavra Alma, a strong guy. So there was a powerful person who had a shivcha in Rimoin. She'atila nefel labor. She had a miscarriage, the shivcha, and she had to dispose of the body. So she threw the dead fetus or the dead child. We don't know how developed it was. That'll come out in the Gemara soon, into a bar. Now, a shivcha kinainis is muchuyev in keeping yemei tumah, yemei tahira. She will become tumah. So we need to know, is this woman tummy for 7 days because it was a male child, or maybe the woman is tummy for 14 days because it was a female child. So there was a kohen there. Rashi Tosfos says something very unique that you don't expect out of Tosfos, but a kohen came, the haters, and looked into the bar, leida im zacher im nekeva. So now the question is, was this kohen matam himself? Now, why did it have to be a kohen? Anybody could have went. Zok Tosfos, we wouldn't be able to say this on our own. Zok Tosfos oisay kohen shoytaya. He was an idiot. The kohen was an idiot. Vertim gebeten to stick his head into that bar. He's not allowed to be matam himself. The feel the kroivim ain't a matamel in the feilim. If it was a nefel, even if it's a karv, even if it's his wife's child, his own child, he wouldn't be able to look. The ve'inyan dum yudava ve'ima. So this shaita went to look. Now we don't know if the kohen is over and aver for being matama himself. Rashi says chacham. The kohen was a chacham. So Tosfos says he was an idiot, and Rashi says he was a chacham. When this chavin lahayres law yeshiva shemiatumah v'meitayra. So Rashi told him genim al ta'adim. Tosfos would never take him al ta'adim and give him a shaita. And it's just funny that should be machlokes Rashi and Tosfos if this guy was a shaita or not. And what happened? They said he's Torah. You know why? Because by the time he looked, that body was gone. Chulda is a weasel. What's a vidalus? Did he touch it? Vidalus is there, which would be like an animal that would eat. It would be a carnivore that would take in the body. Fact the more about hacha, the vade hitila neifa. We know for sure there was a body there. There was for sure a tumah there. Safek gararuhu, safek loy gararuhu. That's mamish a case of in safek moitzim midavadai. Ve kaasi safek moitzim midavadai. So you have a right that something is moitzim midavadai. No, loy teime tila neifa labar. We don't know for sure it was a neifa. Laima tila kemin neifa labar. Whatever came out of her, she doesn't really know if it was a formed baby yet. But whatever it is, she threw that into the bar. So therefore, it's a suffix b'chalal if there was anything that was tummy there in the first place. So as Rashi explains, it's sex faking. Suffix l'nafel al shvir mali ruach, and even if it was something, was it a zachar and a keva? Even if it was something, was it taken away by the bardalis and by the chulda or not? Zok Gemara v'aleida im zachar im nekeva hu katani. The case was they wanted to know if it was male or female, so it was for sure a tover tummy. Zok no hachinamar. Leida meruach apila nefelatila im shaloimer nefelatila leida im zachar and nekeva. That's Rabshat. The boy sema kivin shecholdo uvadlas matzuyin sham. It's no longer a suffix moitzim midavadai. Vadai karu. You can take it to the bank. You can be 1,000% sure that this baby was shlam. Eisei fekdemo. Mota tav nisyad. I'm trying to get blood ahead because we're not learning Sunday. It's Tisha B'Av. Eisvei, mata tabnis yad, tabnis regel, harei leila surin. If you found just a broken hand or broken foot, again, broken is the wrong way to describe it, and we already learned. It's speaking was on a pedestal. Mipnei shechayoytze b'hnevad, because you find sometimes a tabnis of a foot or a hand would be served. Amai hashvarim ninu, they're broken. Zok Gemara, Didn't Shmuel already tell us that it's speaking ba'im din al b'sison? So clearly, this is something that nobody was mevatel. So you don't have a riot to anything that broke. A goy at any time could say, "This is no longer my getchke," and now the getchke becomes mutter to eat. V'shel chavera. The goy could even do that to his friend's getchke, but the Yisrael einem mevatel avodas k'chavim shloy v'k'chavim. A yid cannot do that. So Rashi says, what does it mean? Shalom Shalchaveiroi. Bein shesneim avdim lirach. Asai, if they both service the same getchke. Bein shezeh avid lepaor v'zeh lemarkulos. What if they have different getchkes that they serve? I could say your getchke is nothing, like every chuset says. Yanereb is gunish, right? The avodas k'chavim muteres al yidei bittul. Where do you see that a goy can be mevatel avodas Zara? Come on, we will see the Gemara soon. We bring a riot, but Israel can. Israel ain't about to why can't he? If the guy is giving away his avodah to the yid, so never mind. You need the guy's bittul. You need the yid's bittul. The guy, by getting rid of it, obviously he's not considering it to be an avodah. So there should be an automatic bittul. Elamai, you have a riot to Rabbi Yochanan, that it's not but Rabbaye, no, it's shapichsa. You know what it means? Hika alel Yisrael b'patish. The yid smashed it with a hammer. Achin and smaichel cherasa got crushed. Avaloi chisra klum. There was no pieces missing. Therefore, it's not but. And if he did smash it, wouldn't help because it's still betela. If the guy does that, that's a bitla of avodah zarah because a guy can be mevatel avodah zarah. Al pichsa Yisrael loy batla. Why is Dr. Rashi? The loy dami la'avodas kachavim shenishtav me'alah. That was never degraded. If it broke by itself, then there's a svara shlaka shoals that the guy would say that this is not, he can't save himself. But if the yid took it and smashed it, the Hasam Omar Nafshalei Matzla, if the Geshke broke, the guy says, if he can't save himself, how is he going to save me? The guy would say, it's not missing a piece, it's a little crushed a little bit. Nah, my Geshke is not makbid on that. So therefore, it wouldn't be bottled. Rav Amar, Yisrael, nami bottled. Even if the Yisrael smashed it, it would be bittul. Elexera dilme magvela v'hader mevatla. You're right. If the yid before he was konya to getchka smashed it, then you can assume that it's not an avodah zarah. But here the concern is, if we say to do that, what if the yid by mistake picks it up when he's buying it from the goy before he has a chance to smash it? Now he's going to be stuck with an isra no that there's no way to rectify. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll be